July 19th, 2020. Hello, welcome to the New World Order. We're glad to have you here. Thank you for your obedience and compliance. With your help, we can help protect the lives of everyone. Well, what a joke, guys. We're here. It's just the beginning. Your rights have systematically been taken from you over decades without you even knowing it. All in the name of your protection. And you've bought it up. This has been going on for a long, long time. Now, if you haven't watched the Medical Martial Law Pandemic Profits playlist on my Fear versus Freedom channel, I highly recommend you at least do it. Now, for those of you that are already following people like the James Corbett Report, Ryan from The Last American Vagabond, Derek from The Conscious Resistance, maybe Jordan from Destroying Illusions, then you already know and have been able to see this coming. And if you've been following me, I've been saying this from the beginning, that this has all been engineered as a way to control you and take away your freedoms. And they've always tried to create some type of global threat to where we all have to come together under a new world order or a one world government or some type of control for safety. And it's completely unnecessary, and you're buying into all the lies. Infectious disease have been sold to you as a threat because you're unable to fight against it, and people have been believing this for decades. Folks, understand, you have been blessed with a body that is self-healing and self-regulating. You take care of it, it will take care of you. Again, if you've followed any of my content, you already know this. So let's jump into some articles. Number one, we need to take a look at some of the vaccine information because the mandates are here. All right, if you're paying attention to the phases of reopening, many states have already acknowledged that phase 3 or phase 4 can only happen once the vaccine is available. And we already know that immunity passports, which are already being rolled out in Miami and many other countries around the world, are going to be a way to mandate vaccination without actually making it where you don't have a choice. You can choose out, but you're also choosing out of any public event you can think of, whether it's going to an amusement park like Disneyland or Busch Gardens or whatever it might be, Hollywood Studios. It doesn't matter. You can't go unless you have your immunity passport or your digital ID that has your immunization record showing that you've had the vaccine. You can't get on a bus. You can't get on a plane. You can't travel to your next vacation. So sure, you can choose out of it, but you're choosing out of everything. But it's your choice. You're still free, right? What a crock. So that's coming. But, and the worst part is people are clamoring for it. Oh, I can't wait till we have the vaccine. The vaccine for what? Are you even paying attention to the data? Okay? Mortality rate of this disease, even with the false death rate where they're faking the numbers, even with the inflated death count, the mortality rate is 0.26%. And as the cases continue to rise and the mortality rate continues to decline, well, that mortality rate gets smaller and smaller. A Stanford study recently said the mortality rate of coronavirus is basically zero. But people don't pay attention to the details. They're only influenced by the media and the fear that they project, and your perspective is influenced, and you think, oh my gosh, coronavirus is killing everybody, where's the vaccine? Well, let's take a look. Headline junkies rejoice. Oh, come on, computer. The Moderna Moderna fires up the COVID vaccine race with promising results. Yes, promising results. Shares soar. Stocks going crazy. Headline junkies again rejoice. But what does the freaking article actually say about it? Read it, guys. Holy guacamole. So of course they're going to go, oh, we're so excited about this new vaccine. It's coming and it's great. We have promising results. Oh man. The good news is the vaccine induced antibodies. Oh my gosh, yay. And we all know now the antibodies for coronavirus fade away within 2 to 3 months. So that doesn't even matter. But let's celebrate that point, which they don't guarantee protection either. So what promising results are they talking about? We've created antibodies. Great. Well, what about the non-intended consequences, the non-specific effects, the adverse reactions? Well, let's look at it. More than half of the participants who got the middle of 3 doses, okay, so 2 doses, more than half of the participants who got 2 doses in the Moderna trial suffered adverse reactions like fatigue, chills, headaches, muscle pain. Okay, 40% of people in the 2-dose group experienced a fever after the second shot. And here's the worst part. 21% of those that got 3 doses of this shot experienced severe side effects. Now, if you go to the FDA website and look up, or CDC, one of the two, and look up what the heck a severe side effect is to vaccine, it's things like seizures, encephalitis, paralysis, nerve damage, chronic pain. This is lifelong issues. 21% of those that got 3 doses had a severe reaction. Okay, even in the article it says, quote, "Man, that is a lot of adverse events," says Tony Moody, a doctor and researcher at the Duke Hammond Vaccine Institute. It would be unusual for a vaccine to have this rate of side effects. First of all, it's not unusual. All vaccines have this rate of side effects. Only our regulatory institutions aren't doing true safety science to actually look at adverse events. They're always comparing vaccine to another vaccine and comparing harm to harm and saying, oh, it looks good. No, vaccines cause tons of harm. Now, 21% really is high. On average, if you're actually looking at what little data does exist on vaccine safety, it is more around like 2 to 3%, which is still enormous. But dang, this is a catastrophe. This is not promising results. This is a nightmare coming our way. And not only is it coming our way, it is going to be mandated upon you and your babies. And this isn't an aluminum adjuvanted vaccine. This isn't even just a live viral vaccine. This is an mRNA or DNA vaccine that is changing our DNA. Well, all vaccines have been changing our DNA. We've becoming genetically mutated for a decade or more. My gosh, guys, wake up. This is not good news. These are not promising early results. Just look at the freaking details and do not become a headline junkie. Zero Hedge reported much better on this, breaking down those numbers and showing you that this had an enormous rate of severe symptoms and horrible adverse events. So, make sure that you're always exposing yourself to as many different avenues of content as possible, both mainstream, and learn how to be a critical thinker and see through the headlines and the bull crap and actually dig into the data. And then also follow alternative media and independent, more importantly, independent journalism that wants to point out the facts. Okay? So, there's nothing to celebrate about this vaccine that's going to be forced on you and your family. And we all need to wake up and stand up against these injustices that are happening to all of us. Now, some interesting news. They've been looking at how cannabis can be an effective treatment against the coronavirus. So a lot of outlets did an article about it. If you actually pull up the study, it is actually quite promising. So this study came out this month. SARS-CoV-2 induced respiratory distress. Can cannabinoids be added to antiviral therapies to reduce lung inflammation? And it goes on to talk about the many beneficial anti-inflammatory effects of cannabis, both THC and CBD, but specifically with CBD, the near harmless or side effect free aspect of it. And you should go in here and read this, but what it's focusing on the fact that cannabinoids have an anti-interleukin 6 receptor phenomenon. Okay? Intended to highlight the potential effects of cannabinoids, in particular the non-psychotropic cannabidiol, CBD, that has shown beneficial anti-inflammatory effects in preclinical models of various chronic inflammatory diseases and is FDA approved for seizure reduction in children with intractable epilepsy. Now that's kind of a misleading statement because they really didn't FDA approve CBD. They only approved Epidiolex by itself, which is an isolated CBD extract from the cannabis plant. But they didn't approve CBD in general, at least not that I'm aware of. Anyway, like THC, or delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, the most well-studied cannabinoid, CBD, decreased lung inflammation and murine model of acute lung injury potentially through the inhibition of pro-inflammatory cytokine production by immune cells and suppressing exuberant immune responses. CBD can inhibit the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin 2, 6, 1-alpha and beta, interferon gamma, inducible protein 10, monocyte, chemoattractant protein 1, macrophage inflammatory protein 1 alpha, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. That have been associated with SARS-CoV-2 induced multi-organ pathology and mortality. In a murine model of chronic asthma, CBD reduced pro-inflammatory cytokine production, airway inflammation, and fibrosis. Moreover, CBD can effectively inhibit the JAK-STAT pathway, including the production and action of type 1 interferons without leading to addiction, alterations in heart rate or blood pressure, and adverse effects on the gastrointestinal tract and even cognition. It's amazing. In simian immunodeficiency virus infected rhesus macaques, we reported THC mediated attenuation of IFN-stimulated gene expression in the intestines. Similar to CBD, chronic THC administration blocked inflammation, induced fibrosis in lymph nodes, and chronically SIV-infected rhesus macaques. Unlike THC, though, CBD has a high margin of safety and is well tolerated pharmacologically even after treatments of up to 1,500 milligrams a day for 2 weeks in both animals and humans, which suggests its feasibility to reduce SARS-CoV-2-induced lung inflammation, pathology, and disease severity. And it goes full in depth into it. Go ahead and look it up and read it. It's just another piece of nutrition, guys. It's a phenomenal supplement. If you haven't watched my introduction to cannabis, it's a good one to watch. Again, this is just something that should be a part of your daily routine. It's food. Okay. Bad news. Colorado has gone ahead and mandated masks on everyone. Effective Order D-2020-138 is a mandatory statewide mask order that goes into effect at midnight on July 16, 2020, and will be in effect for 30 days. It may be extended. Fast facts. The order requires people in Colorado who are 11 and older to wear coverings over their noses and mouths. This is a big deal, guys. First off, there is no science that supports that masks prevent transmission or infection, and the science that does exist, which is limited, all support the fact that cloth masks, which is what they're asking us to wear, this isn't a N95 surgical mask, it's cloth masks, actually increase the rate of infection because you are not only limiting your oxygen intake, increasing your carbon dioxide intake, but the moisture of your breathing is absorbed into that cloth. Bacteria starts to multiply like crazy, and then you continue to rebreathe high levels of both bacteria and viruses, increasing the viral load within your body and suppressing your immune system and creating a more optimal environment for any infectious disease. We are going to become sicker because of this mandate. And in fact, you're going to see an increase in sales of over-the-counter drugs that I would tell you never to take, like Tylenol, Excedrin, ibuprofen, because people are going to be having headaches and all kinds of other secondary problems to the mask wearing that they don't give a crap about. And this all for a coronavirus that has a mortality rate near zero, and that everybody tests positive for, because it's a virus so dangerous you have to be tested to even know you ever had it. Come on, guys. Wake up and recognize this is all part of a bigger agenda, folks. Our civil liberties are being taken from us, and people aren't even paying attention to that fact. So, you have to wear a mask when entering or moving within any public indoor space, while using or waiting to use public buses or light rail or non-personal transportation like taxis or car services, Uber, etc. People who do not have to wear a mask, and this is an important part. Anybody under the 10 and under, right? You don't have to wear a mask, which is great because those kids' brains need it. But it's not just the kids, folks. People who cannot medically tolerate a face covering, and technically, that is everyone. Everybody. If you put on a mask and you are uncomfortable at all, that is your body saying something's wrong. Take it off. And you can cite, my body cannot medically tolerate this face covering. Because it can't. And I'm going to show you. Children's age 2 and under should not, never, ever wear a mask or cloth face covering. We need oxygen all the time at the levels that the earth provides. We have evolved on this earth with the oxygen in this air at a very specific level, and that is how our body operates. Okay? So keep in mind, guys, people who cannot medically tolerate a face covering should not wear one. That's you. That's me. That's all my kids. That's my mom and dad. That's everyone. Let's learn a little bit about it. How does your body use oxygen? Now, this was written about a Mount Everest climb, right? And them talking about how the changes in the atmospheric pressure affect the oxygen concentration in the air and what it does to our body. Wearing a mask is going to have a very, very, very similar effect. I just did an Instagram post using this information to just help share people wake up a little bit. Let's just read through this real quick. We depend on air for survival. Am I even recording? Yes. Okay. We depend on air for our survival, but more specifically, we depend on oxygen. Without it, we would die, but with it, we thrive. Enough oxygen must reach the tiny cells throughout our body to feed them, giving them the energy necessary for life. As a mountaineer climber goes higher up, their bodies must try to get enough oxygen to their cells. Or as an everyday individual who's wearing a mask continues to wear that mask, doesn't get the amount of oxygen their body normally does, and then rebreathes the carbon dioxide that they should be exhaling, their body has to adjust. Sometimes, no matter how fit the body, and that's key to understand, no matter how fit the body, it will fall victim to the effects of low oxygen. You will face fatigue, hyperventilation, fainting, or even worse. And fainting, guys, is extremely dangerous. If you pass out because you're wearing a mask, you're going to fall all the way to the floor and you will not brace your fall. Okay? Your head will hit the concrete floor of that Costco or wherever you are, or any sharp desk or anything around you, and you will face severe injury and potential death. How does our body use oxygen? Air enters the lungs as muscles expand the chest outward. This opens up our chest, and the atmospheric pressure then just rushes air in to fill the space. Then muscles contract, forcing that air back out. It is a very simple and elegant process, and it is essential for moving oxygen into the body. Now, as that air rushes down into the lungs, it is warmed by our body. It is moistened by our body. And more importantly, it is cleaned by the upper airways. Okay? Viruses have been a part of this air for all of history. Okay? This coronavirus is nothing new. So stop believing the BS. The colder the air, the more dry the air, especially living here in Colorado at a high elevation, the more energy and moisture that is needed to warm it. Now, the air travels down the large trachea into the lungs. Here it continues through smaller and smaller tube-like structures called bronchioles until it reaches the tiniest air sacs named alveoli. At that point, tiny blood vessels known as capillaries carry the blood past the alveoli, which replenish it with new oxygen. As climbers go higher and higher, the pressure of air changes and the efficiency of this exchange is affected. Or, as individuals wear masks and restrict the oxygen intake, the efficiency of this exchange is affected on every person. Oxygen is and should be carried by the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. These amazing carriers of oxygen become more efficient when less oxygen is available, helping us adapt for a short time. So running to the grocery store to buy a few groceries, you may be okay for a short time. But this mandate, they've already told us, schools will be reopening, but masks are mandatory. Are you kidding me? You're going to have a child wear a mask for 6, 7, 8 hours a day? This is unreal. This is horrible that they would even suggest such a thing. So, it may go unnoticed for a short time, but after a little while, the body can have a more difficult time getting enough oxygen to the cells. Oxygenated blood rushes from the capillaries in the lungs through larger and larger blood vessels until it returns to the left side of the heart and is pumped throughout the body. Large and small arteries provide a network to deliver the oxygenated blood to the cells. At critical points, these arteries break into increasingly smaller branches until they reach the capillaries where the oxygen is fed to the individual cells. This is every cell in your body, guys. You need oxygen. The energy station of the cells, called mitochondria, we all know this, process oxygen to power the cells. This is how they make adenosine triphosphate. They can't do it without oxygen. ATP is the energy cell that helps us live, right? Now, as part of this combustion process, carbon dioxide is released at different levels of exertion and oxygen pressures. The amount of carbon dioxide in the blood can change. Too much carbon dioxide will stimulate the body to breathe, just as a lack of oxygen does the same. An unhealthy balance will cause the symptoms of altitude sickness. This is what everybody's reporting with coronavirus because as much as it is a respiratory disease, it's also a blood pathogen. It's affecting, people are actually able to breathe. Their lungs are full of oxygen. But where it's broken is at the hemoglobin level, where the hemoglobin is unable to take the oxygen and transport it throughout the body to the organs and cells. We know how to fix this with certain medications or interference. It's not the ventilator, which has a mortality rate of 90%. It's not the ventilator. The lungs have oxygen. The hemoglobin isn't able to transport it for some reason. Do your research. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Through this labyrinth of blood vessels, now called veins, the hemoglobin returns carbon dioxide through the heart and to the lungs. Carbon dioxide is released back out as you exhale, and the process starts all over again. Now, everywhere on Earth, oxygen makes up 20.96% of the gas in the air. The rest is nitrogen, almost. The atmospheric pressure helps determine just how dense the air is and therefore what concentration of oxygen the air contains. And this is where the masks change everything. that percentage of oxygen is brought down drastically and quickly within less than a minute. That percentage drops to like 17%. And you're no longer getting the oxygen that your body needs. Your blood oxygen level starts to stop or starts to drop. And then you feel like you need to breathe more. So then I got this mask on and I don't feel good and I'm starting to get anxiety. And you're breathing harder. You're breathing harder because your body's recognizing that drop in blood oxygen. And a drastic increase, a toxic increase of the carbon dioxide, because with every exhale, you're breathing that right back in. And you become the hypercapnia with toxic levels of carbon dioxide. And again, politicians are going to say, oh, but it's such a small amount and it's not a big deal. Gee, does that sound familiar? It's what they tell you about toxins and vaccines. It's not a big deal. It's such a small amount. Yet we have kids, 1 in 54 kids with autism and epilepsy on the rise and all these chronic diseases. But it's not a big deal, guys. So, as you can see, masks are a problem. They don't help. Do your research. Ben Swan did a great expose recently on the fact that masks don't prevent infection. They don't stop transmission, and they only actually increase infection rates and harm. So check that out. I'm going to plug my new Instagram here for a second, where I'm posting little bits of information. I hope you can come follow me. And just to get people to think a little bit, like, you know, this quote, the obedient always think of themselves as virtuous rather than cowardly, because they're not questioning what they're being told, and there's consequences to it. And anybody that actually does do their own research is being labeled selfish, right? Our own governor said, you're a selfish bastard if you don't wear a mask, even though that's putting me and my children at greater risk of any infection, let alone coronavirus, right? So I threw all of that together in a little Instagram post, and then of course added a little bit more. Oxygen in your brain. See, this was just talking about at the cellular level, but more importantly, your brain. Let's just read it. Your brain requires a tremendous amount of energy, and in order to meet this demand, the flow of blood must be precisely choreographed to ensure that oxygen is being delivered where it is needed and when it is needed. Energy in the brain is generated almost exclusively from a form of metabolism that requires oxygen. However, neurons only maintain a very small reserve of energy, and these cells require a continuous supply of oxygen, especially when cells are firing or communicating with their neighbors. In fact, the brain's oxygen demands are enormous. Despite comprising only 2% of the body, our brains consume 20% of the body's oxygen supply. That is huge. And any drop in your blood oxygen level is going to affect your brain almost immediately. Okay? Holden would go right into a seizure if we had him wearing a mask at school for an hour, 2 hours a day. And many kids are going to face problems, but adults, how many of you, since this has been going on, have had an increase in headaches, maybe even nausea, maybe other symptoms, especially anxiety, where you're just like constantly feeling, number one, fear that they're pushing on you all the time is affecting you, but also this stupid mask. Okay, this is making the entire population more susceptible, and that is not an accident. So, my Instagram, if you want to follow me, is above_genetics. Yes, I'm talking about epigenetics, our environmental factors, a huge thing that I always talk about. I'd love some more followers there. And I do plug this YouTube channel every once in a while there as well. All right, so oxygen, breathe it, use your brain, recognize the corruption going on all around us. Now, moving on. Something else that I've always talked passionately about is eating organic, right? And I try to educate everybody about all the poison in their food, especially the pesticides and herbicides that are found at very high concentrations. And just over the past couple of weeks, I've been out really on vacation with family, just enjoying some time with family in Utah, from southern Utah up to northern Utah. And of course, always having these conversations with people and trying to help them and their family live a healthy lifestyle. and I'm pushing organic, and they say, yeah, but how do you even know it's organic? You're just putting trust somewhere. And that's true. And I say, you know what? You're right. I'm going to trust that these farmers are going through the certification process of being organic and hoping that there isn't fraud. And I said, but nothing's perfect. Okay. The program's not perfect. There is going to be some levels of pesticide, but what I know I'm doing is reducing the toxic load on me and my family. I have felt it. I have seen it. I have witnessed what it can do just by switching to organic. And I'm not just reducing pesticides. I'm eliminating artificial colors, artificial flavors, excitotoxins. And there's hundreds of ingredients that are never allowed in organic. So is it perfect? No. Is it worth it? Absolutely. And it's only going to get better. This is a great article. USDA unveils new rules to combat organic fraud. And yes, organic fraud exists, right? So last August, a perpetrator of the largest known organic fraud case in history was sentenced to more than a decade in prison. This farmer, Randy Constant, had sold more than $142 million worth of non-organic animal feed to unwitting livestock growers, who then fed it to their animals, which technically stopped that meat from being organic the second the non-organic grain touched their mouths. Truth. So when they were slaughtered and eaten, people paid extra, like myself, paid a premium for this organic meat and got non-organic meat. But again, this is not the norm, but it does happen. Now, this farmer, Mr. Constant, never served his time because, like a chicken shit, he committed suicide days after sentencing instead of facing the consequences of the actions of his fraud. Now, as for all those consumers buying not quite organic meat, they were likely none the wiser. There's a considerable degree of doubt as to whether organic food tastes better or is more nutritious. Like, that's the point. I don't buy organic because it tastes better or is more nutritious. I buy it to avoid the poison. Okay? But what you'll learn is there is a greater nutritional profile in organic to a degree, not to mention the reduction in the toxic load. So anyway, it's going to go on and talk about how new guidelines are going to be put into place, right? So the industry demand for better quality control, the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, has unveiled a new draft proposed rule aimed at stopping organic food fraud last week, meant to protect integrity in the supply chain and build consumer and industry trust in the agency's organic label, the only official certification. The new guideline update organic regulations to mandate unannounced inspections, very important, okay? Unannounced inspections, new traceability requirements for imported product, require labeling for non-retail containers, and put in place new oversight for the certification process, among other things. So this is really good. I'm glad they're getting a little more strict with this. And if you're using this as an excuse not to go organic, that is a huge mistake. And let's look at just one example why. Okay? Recent article from June 13th, 2020. Non-organic cow's milk found to contain toxic chemicals like pesticides and growth hormones, both of which are going to be endocrine disrupting and catastrophic on our health. So what did the studies show? Lots of people are waking up to the dangers of conventional produce and sticking to organic varieties. But a recent study serves as a reminder of why it's also important to go organic when it comes to cow's milk too. Not just milk, any meat product that you can find. The study, which was published in the Public Health Nutrition Journal, found that a significant amount of the conventional milk sold in the U.S. contains dangerous contaminants. For the study, researchers randomly purchased half-gallon jugs of conventional and organic milk at various retail stores. All told, they studied 35 samples of conventional milk, 18 different brands, and then 34 samples of organic milk from 10 different brands. They tested the 69 samples for antibiotics, pesticides, insulin-like growth factor, and bovine growth hormones using methods such as liquid and gas chromatography and mass and tandem mass spectrometry. Although it's not surprising that they found contamination in the conventional samples, of course they did, the extent of that contamination is eye-opening. 60% of those samples had antibiotics such as, this is a big deal guys, oxytetracycline, amoxicillin, sulfadimethoxone, sulfathiazole, and sulfamethiazine. The last two are banned in dairy production, but were found in 26 and 30% of the samples respectively. Antibiotics from the sulfonamide family are no longer allowed to be used for dairy production on account of human health concerns, including side effects such as muscle and joint pain, lower back pain, abdominal cramping, along with potentially life-threatening allergic reactions. In addition, one of the samples had levels of amoxicillin that were higher than the federal limit. When it comes to pesticides, up to 60% of the samples were found to be contaminated. 59% of samples contained chlorpyrifos, which has been banned in California, an insecticide that could cause brain damage, reduced IQ, aggressiveness, neurological abnormalities, and disrupted brain development in children. Meanwhile, 46% of the samples contained permethrin, an insecticide that has been linked to behavioral problems in children. Atrazine, and if you don't know atrazine, you don't know Alex Jones, I guess, which has been linked to reproductive damage in animals as well as cancer and birth defects, was found in 26% of samples studied. In addition, 60% contained diazinon and 49% contained cypermethrin. None of these pesticides or antibiotics were found in the 34 samples of organic milk that were studied. So is it worth it? Heck yes. Goes on then to talk about all the different benefits of organic milk. For example, it's a healthier ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, containing 62% more omega-3, 25% fewer omega-6. That's a big deal. If you don't understand that, you should look into the work of Dr. Russell Blaylock. He talks in depth about this, and so does Weston A. Price Foundation. This equates to a 2.5-fold higher omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Or vice versa, they might have meant there. Anyway, in addition, organic milk has higher levels of conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, which is beneficial for your heart health and can also help prevent cancer. The levels of CLA in organic milk was 18% higher than those noted in conventional milk. Other studies showed that organic milk contains greater levels of beta-carotene and vitamin E, which are vital for the immune system. So, while we often hear authorities insisting that lower levels of some of these chemicals simply aren't enough to cause damage, the truth is that they are discussing just one specific food. It's the big picture that matters, and when you add up the exposure a person gets from all the various insignificant sources day after day and year after year, it can be more than enough to cause serious damage. That is one big reason that going organic can have such a positive impact on your health. I just dare you to do it. Do it, commit to it for 3 months and tell me you don't see a difference in you and your family. Come on, please. All right, let's end it there. Take control of your family. Take control of your life. While you still have a shred of freedom and choice, make those choices matter for you and your family. You are the most important person in your life. I am the most important person in my life. And until I started treating myself as the most important person, I wasn't giving my family the best I could give. Once I put myself number one, I could take care of them better than I've ever taken care of them ever. It started putting Holden first, right? He has to have organic. It has to be clean. It has to be perfect. And then it was like, you know what? If he has to have that, so do I. And now I insist on only the best for myself, only the best for Holden. I teach my wife and kids only the best, and I let them choose what they want. Sometimes they make that only the best decision. Sometimes they make exceptions. I do my best to not make exceptions. I've made some here and there. But I always regret it. All right, guys. Love you. Love yourself. Have a good one.